Greetings and welcome to the United States Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. My name is Gennady Stoliarov II, and I am the chairman of the U.S. Transhumanist Party. Here we hold conversations with some of the world's leading thinkers in longevity, science, technology, philosophy, and politics. Like the philosophers of the Age of Enlightenment, we aim to connect every field of human endeavor and arrive at new insights to achieve longer lives, greater rationality, and the progress of our civilization. Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our U.S. Transhumanist Party Virtual Enlightenment Salon. Today is Sunday, July 26th, 2026, and we have a fascinating conversation in store for you about the state of longevity, biomedical science, and community building in Japan. We don't often hear news from Japan in the Western world when it comes to transhumanist or longevity related developments, but there are really a lot of fascinating events happening there recently, and there are aspects of Japan's culture and economy which are quite compatible with transhumanism. They're indeed implicitly transhumanist, and this is what we want to explore today in great depth. So joining us is our esteemed panel of U.S. Transhumanist Party officers and advisors, including our Director of Visual Art, Art Ramon Garcia, our Director of Publications, Zach Richardson, our Technology Advisor and Foreign Ambassador in Spain, Dr. Jose Cordero, and our special guests today join us from Austin, Texas at present, but they have close ties to Japan. Victoria Massó is a senior innovation and operations leader specializing in entrepreneurship, digital innovation ecosystems, and public-private collaboration. She has led and scaled innovation programs across the UN system, special economic zones, and emerging tech hubs, working at the intersection of policy, startups, and frontier technologies. She is the chief of operations at Unchained Biomedical, which is accelerating the adoption of frontier biotechnology. And she is also the co-organizer of Mirai Tech City, a month-long pop-up city in Kobe, Japan, dedicated to catalyzing longevity innovation, which will be in operation throughout October 2026. And this will be a major topic of our conversation today. And accompanying her today is Nelson Milla, who is the Chief Technology Officer of Unchained Biomedical. And again, Unchained Biomedical is a startup focusing on early commercialization in Japan for regenerative therapeutics. You can find the website at unchainedbio.com. And you can also find the website of Mirai Tech City at miraitech.city. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us today. And Victoria, you have a presentation that you've prepared for us. So why don't we begin? And let's hear about Mirai Tech City. Let's see. I think we need to unmute.
Yes, here we go. Hi, I was saying absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, and thank you so much for the time here. We're super excited to be part of the salon. I think before I go into the presentation, I'm just going to give a bit of context behind. So I've been, as you very well mentioned, I've been working with innovation ecosystem for over a decade. And one of the problems, and I think we did have this conversation when we met back in Vitalis Bay, is that we do see like there's a lot of technologies that are already available, therapies that are available. Like we can cure the blind, people that are missing certain limbs can already be able to have robotics implemented. There's so many like technologies. But not everyone has access to it, and we're not going as fast as we could. So a lot of the issue that we end up finding is that it's not a creating the technologies, is how do we get the technologies to the people that need it, to improve their lives, to live longer. And a lot of this has to do with ecosystems problems. And so, as part of our journey, we've been exploring on where in the world I can find the best ecosystem to be able to bring the community and be able to have those therapies and amazing innovations that are in the field to really be given and used by patients or just people that opt into enhancing their lives and their health and the health span. And so from here we came into Japan. Japan is one of the most interesting ecosystems when it comes to accelerating everything that has to do with longevity, not only because of their fantastic regulations that I'll go a little bit into my presentation, but also because of the level of technologies that are being developed there, their infrastructure, and their already ingrained culture that they have. So this is why we have been focusing in Japan. And the reason why we're doing Mirai Tech, it's a bit of like trying to open that black box that is Japan. I find it quite interesting that not a lot of people really know what's going on in Asia. And it's not only Japan, there's like other places in Asia, like China, that are really doing things very, very interesting for us that want to see those innovations and for aging to be completely cured and eradicated, right? And this is part of what this is. And so I'm just gonna go. Let me see if I can do this. So and we're just gonna go in October to Japan. So we've been there for a while now, trying to get connected really well with the ecosystem. And we're trying to open that up for the community this October, where we're going to go there to build the next generation of longevity and biotech. So it's going to be the full month of October. And our aim is, as a lot of us here, is to cure and prevent all age-related diseases and also enhance humans, right? And so Japan is the place where we found it. Right now, we're aiming to have around 300 community residents. We're going to be running a residency with Kobe University, where we're going to have access to labs, and we're aiming to have around 30 companies. Like I mentioned, in the spirit of a pop-up, is a month long, ending with a summit. We're going to be having over 100 speakers, and we already have more than 15 supporting organizations working with us on this pop-up. So why accelerating Japan, right? And like I was mentioning, like Japan is a very interesting place. Just starting about longevity at its core. And I learned recently a very they like heartwarming and inspiring story by Mac Davis from Inner Circle. So he shared that, which I didn't know, Japan is the only nation in the world whose building mythology actually includes a quest for immortality. He's much better to tell this story than I am, but in China, they wanted to do a trip to a place where they thought that they could achieve immortality after this emperor have already achieved everything, and so they were looking into this place that had this like big mountain that is Mount Fuji, and that's how they ended up in Japan. So this is something that is already quite ingrained in the culture. You already know, like everyone knows that they have some of the highest expectations in the world, but then above that, in their culture, they already care a lot about preventive medicine. So that's something that they do yearly, and it's mandatory as well, and incredibly inexpensive to do, including like MRIs and just like full blood works every year. They have a culture where they go to onsens, which are hot springs, their diet. So it's what some people are calling longevity IO, integrated into their culture. The other thing that is very interesting about Japan to accelerate therapies go to market is their regulatory system. So they have various frameworks and regulations to accelerate therapies to go to market, including certain therapies, specific, especially when it comes to cell and gene therapies, that it could be approved in under a year, which is amazing, because that means that they can start providing these therapies to people and keep collecting the data even before they're fully approved. So that in itself is an outstanding advancement. Again, all this population, we've known that, and part of why they have this like fast track regulations is because they've been dealing with having the oldest population for over 40 years. So their governmental incentives are differently aligned. This is something that is affecting heavily economically. I'm sure that a lot of people have seen about like the shrinking population, the disappearance of even like full activities that are very like traditional in Japan. And so this is for them a priority, which makes it a great opportunity for us that are trying to innovate in these fields. Again, the other thing that's it's very affordable to live there is right now the yen is very low, if not at its lowest, and is very affordable to anything that has to do with food and housing, which compared to the US, for example, or to the UK or some places in Europe, is not even heard of that you can buy a house for $10,000, and even just like rent. So it's very interesting as well in that sense. And then the other thing that they have is they have great infrastructure and grants. Just to mention one of them, there's an organization called AMED, which is the Medical Research and Development, and they do 1-to-2 ratio grants, which means that for any investment, VC-backed, there are nuances as to what I'm going to say. I'm oversimplifying it, but they will double the investment without taking any shares of the company. So that allows a lot of companies in the life sciences to be able to commercialize in Japan and do the research in Japan. And it's an incredible opportunity. And like this, there's more. This is just touching the surface. So, sorry. So what we're trying to achieve as an overall project with this is that this is not going to be only an event. I know that a lot of people are in this call, in this salon right now. They've probably been to several pop-up cities in different places. I think in the similar way to like different pop-up cities is about creating density, and with that density, being able to accelerate the level of collaborations. And partnerships are created to be able to accelerate what we're doing and really have a chance into curing aging. So we're going to be starting this first time in Japan this year in October for people to come and explore Japan, specifically in Kobe, where I'll go in a second into why it's such a relevant place. But then from here, we're going to be developing an open source blueprint for longevity regulations. The idea for this to be open source is that because during this month, there's going to be thought leaders, investors, entrepreneurs, so different stakeholders who care about this, making this a reality, will be able to co-create this open source blueprint that will be able to be used or implemented or changed and implemented in different jurisdictions as people see fit. So it will be a collaborative effort. And at the same time, it will be the moment where we're going to be connecting with the ecosystem at a deeper level. The most difficult thing in Japan, I believe, in my experience, is really to know who to talk to and where to go. And this is what we're trying to bridge during this October month. So it's going to be an incredible opportunity to really get connected to the right people. After that, we're going to be selecting a permanent hub to be established. So this is a long-term vision. But ultimately, what we want to do is that right now, there's a lot of things that can be done with the current regulations. We want to be able to extend them to make it easier for entrepreneurs and researchers to really bring their therapies to market. And we're talking about that like faster and responsible iterations of these therapies and technologies, and ultimately be able to create a special economic zone in Japan focused on longevity. Now, what's important about this is that this is something that is feasible to do in Japan. they have over 13 special economic zones. They don't call them special economic zones, but it's a similar concept. And it's about having pilot areas where you can have different regulations and iterate, and if successful, they become national. So the impact is huge. And Japan brings the possibility of make this a reality. Kobe, if you don't know where Kobe is, actually, I'm going to show you real quick. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but this over here, Osaka, Kyoto, sorry, Kobe, Osaka, and Kyoto, that looks like a little triangle. We're calling it the bio triangle. So this is the bio triangle. This is where a lot of in the Kansai area, this is where a lot of the biotech is focused. And the distance between Kobe and Osaka, Kobe and Kyoto ranges between 20 minutes and 40 minutes. So they're very close by. And this is where we're going to be established. Kobe, historically, is quite interesting. There was a time in Japan where Japan closed its doors to the world, and they opened again. And the first places to open and bring new technology, new innovation, foreigners and innovators to come in was Kobe. One of the few ports that are open to bring that talent. And we're taking on that history and doing very similar way, but we're doing this with longevity and innovation. And like I mentioned, this is happening in this area. So the special we're going to be doing it, and this is very important, in KBIC, which is the Kobe Biomedical Innovation Cluster. Is its own special economic zone, specializing in biotech in Japan. Is the oldest and most comprehensive one that exists. It has amazing infrastructure, has mega pharma, smaller companies, manufacturing. It has everything. It's a man-made island, so you're not going to find older traditional houses, but what you're going to find is a lot of biotech and a lot of medtech happening. And so this is what we're going to be doing it. And the other areas that we're going to be collaborating with are Kyoto and Osaka, and it's very easy to move around. It's actually quite great. This is a little bit of how it looks like, just to like tickle the tourist in you. Ways to participate, like I mentioned, there's going to be a residency, because we're really aiming to have companies to come and accelerate their therapies in Japan and get real patient evidence to then package it and accelerate their path through the FDA. So we're going to be having a residency with Kobe University, where people, like organizations, can apply, and it will be focused on medical devices or therapeutics. Both are great. And the other way of participating is as builders. So right now, right now it looks a little bit like this. And so the residency is going to be happening for 3 months. So they'll actually start before, but it overlaps with the event in October. And the event in October, we already have over 30 speakers confirmed, both from Japan and the West. Then the way that it's going to look like is that the first 2 and a bit weeks are going to be about community integration. This is where we're going to be able to have conversations with the PMDA, which is equivalent to the FDA, get to know the special economic zone, get to know other special economic zones nearby, and have those conversations with whoever it is that you want to talk to and connect with. Then 17th, 18th, we're going to be having the first summit weekend. And this is going to be all around technologies and science. So we're going to be just bringing different innovations. So for example, MiniCircle is going to be participating during this weekend, as well as other like really incredible technologies and discoveries. And then the 24th and 25th, we're going to have, so that will be the weekend after, we're going to have a summit that is all about building a bridge between the East and the West. We're going to be creating spaces for collaboration, discussing bottlenecks and solutions. There's going to be a lot of focus on regulations. We have invited guests from different jurisdictions that are also in the works of pushing a similar ways of accelerating therapies to go to markets, such as in New Hampshire, for example, or Montana, and be able, again, to cure all diseases, cure aging. And then at the end, we're going to close with an enhanced fashion show and demo day. So as always, we finish with a demo day and investors. But the enhanced fashion show, just want to show you, it's not a normal fashion show. It's a fashion show to be able to inspire individuals to see human enhancement and longevity in a different light. So one of our co-founders calls it a bright mirror, instead of Black Mirror, a bright mirror narrative, where instead of seeing, which it happens to a lot of people, seeing all these things very scary, being able to inspire people through fashion. So, for example, we would have someone that has taken a therapy like follistatin, showing how at their age, maybe like in their 80s, they're very muscular. From that to having exoskeletons, biosensors, smart prosthetics, and so on. So that's a little bit of the idea, and then we close what the pop-up city is. Everyone knows how pop-up city works. We have a great group of people that are co-creating this. We're all focusing on the same goal of being able to accelerate and therapies and technologies to cure aging and enhance humans. So if you want to know more, you can scan the QR code, or you can just go to Mirai Tech City. But hopefully this opens up the conversation a little bit, and we have a few people in the room that can also talk about Japan, so it's going to be great. Thank you so much.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Victoria, for that presentation. And we will leave up the slide, if you'd like, for the contact information for Mirai Tech City. But in the meantime, let's hear from Nelson as to his impressions of Japan, as well as the work of Unchained Bio and how that's going to relate to the Mirai Tech City.
Yeah, for sure. I have found in Japan a place that is really not afraid, especially of regenerative medicine. I think that as Westerners, we have way more moral stops when it comes to things like stem cells, most popularly stem cells, right? But to the concept of aging as a whole, as this also reverence to death, right? That has been like really into our Western culture. So the first thing that I noticed going to Japan is that people have a different relationship to aging, also because of need, right? Like one of the most repetitive subjects that you have in Japan is how they have this aging population problem, right? And people are having to work to into a really old age, right? And so these people that are trying to keep themselves as healthy as possible, because they're 60 or 70 years old. Some you can see even people in their 80s working. They are really open to what is the technology that enables them to have an active lifestyle, right? And on the other side, you have really superb research done by a lot of professors over there, especially in this field. Like obviously, everyone has a lot of respect for Professor Yamanaka's work when it comes to Yamanaka factors and iPSCs. And he is also one of the big proponents of these regulatory pathways that enable medicine to hit patients years in advance, right? So our role in on-chain bio, what we are building is a way for Western startups, because big pharma is already using it. You can find out through case studies that Eli Lilly, Bayer, all these folks, they are deploying therapeutics in the Japanese market. But it takes a lot of investment that startups just don't have the resources to do, especially when it comes to Japan is and this came a lot from like business lessons from Westerners that have been working in Japan for a long time. You get that the Japanese corporations, the way that they work is that they have a high level barrier of entry. And I remember this story from a friend that he had a business representative that was trying to get a contract with a Japanese corporation, and he had to show up like this business rep every day to the office, and he was just at the entrance trying to get their attention. Um, he pivoted into cleaning their entrance, so every morning he would go there with a broom and just start cleaning their entrance, trying to get a chance to meet the CEO, until like his persistent payoff, the CEO like opened up for a meeting. And then the thing is, once you have crossed that threshold, uh, they have loyalty, right? So they rarely change providers. They have very low like churn rates. Like once you have converted them into believers of your cows, that they will not abandon you, right? So we are building those relationships on behalf of startups. We're building the relationship with hospitals, regulators, universities, which are also very important in that field, in order for Western startups that are also producing great technology, like we have great companies here in the US trying to get to patients, in order for them to have a soft landing pad in Japan, right? So that has been our experience so far. That's what we are doing in Unchain, and that is why we as Unchain are really putting time and resources into helping organize Mirai Tech City, which we are not the sole organizers, right? Like we came to Japan first, we saw in person, but this has been like a big collective effort between both Japanese people, Western people, in order to have people see what Japan is offering, see what Japan has to offer humans as a whole when it comes to regenerative medicine. I have been reading the chat a little bit, and people are talking about the teeth regrowth company in Japan that was like really popular not that long ago. But they have also just last year expedited in vivo and ex vivo gene therapies for fast track approval in Japan. So you can theoretically, if you have safety data, go to market in Japan in under a year with a gene therapy, which is really cool. So all of these things, right?
Yes, absolutely. And the comment you're referring to is from our friend John H. More Life Please, who says he's been hearing about techniques out of Japan for allowing humans to grow a third set of teeth. This is in human trials now and expected to be on the market in the early to mid 2030s. And also, it's interesting that Japan has some technological leadership in other areas. So Daniel Tweed writes that a Japanese company has also announced a space elevator project, another way Japan is unashamedly future focused. And this project is being led by the Obayashi Corporation, a major construction firm that also built the Tokyo Skytree. You can find out more information on this URL of the Obayashi Corporation website. So we've had an observation from John H., who writes, Japan and Asia in general seem far more future focused nowadays than the US. And I'm curious, Victoria and Nelson, what do you think of that observation? Having lived in both countries, how does Japan compare to the United States in terms of friendliness to emerging technologies, the willingness of the broader society to embrace them in particular?
Maybe I can take that one. It is very interesting in the sense of academia is really strong in Japan. A lot of technology development is coming from academia or from big corporations that are doing constantly spin-off, right? So it's interesting because the West have way more startups, compared to Japan. Like other Asian countries are very big on startups, but Japan is not that big on startups. They are really big on academia, and they are really big on spin-offs. So the end result of that is that they are not necessarily chasing venture-backed results. Like they don't care that much about how much money they can make, right? Interestingly, so they have a lot of like small conveniences that wouldn't return like a venture-backed fund. They have a lot of things that they have invented that they are great, that they provide comfort, that they are really interesting products, right? That not necessarily are going to have like the same scale or the same ambition as building the biggest LLM in the world, but that it's very, very Japanese. They also have a very interesting relationship with tech, because they really like their tech to last long. I think that they are one of the very few countries in the world that they still use CDs. Like every house, they have their own stereo. They have physical CDs. They still play. They don't stream music. They really buy it. They have their own collections. Same goes with movies. So it's this weird thing of they live in the future, and they have a lot of past tech that they still use, that they still find value in, and they still push out a lot of products that are really good, that they have been crafted properly, that they are great for consumers, while not like trying to pursue these big monolith projects that venture capital tend to pursue in the US. The US is still ahead when it comes to startups. The US is still ahead when it comes to those kind of moonshot projects. But Japan definitely has benefited a lot from the quality of life that provides having all of these small add-ons. That, yeah, so it's interesting.
Can you explain a little bit what you mean when you say the U.S. is still ahead or like at the cutting edge for the moonshot products, whereas what factors would you use to determine that, or is this just sort of a sense like some of the coolest stuff you know of is going on here? Or can you speak on that for a minute?
So for example, when you see and again, like I cannot speak for China. I'm speaking just Japan versus US, which are like the two ecosystems that I know well. When you see at the Japan venture capital ecosystem, a lot of resources go to foreigners. So, for example, this past Antler batch, it was like around 40 companies, and Antler is like the one accelerator that it's active in Japan. They have their office in Tokyo. And so this last batch was about 40 companies. From those 40 companies, around 3 or 4 were Japanese founders. So the ones that are doing entrepreneurship or startups in Japan are foreigners. So that's one. The second one is the biggest fund that exists right now in Japan. It's actually a biotech fund. You can find it. It's called AN Venture. And they are a venture studio. And the specialization that they have is that they find Japanese research. So they go into academia, they find all of these IPs that are really promising, and they find a Westerner that it's willing to take this IP into market, right? There has been a lot of speculation into the why this happens, specifically with startups. And there are like a couple hypotheses floating around. One of, let's say, the generalist venture capital firm, that's the most popular one. They are Coral Venture. So Coral Venture, they have this blog post on why Japanese are less startup minded. And they think, or they propose in that article, that it's because of a gene that makes people take less risk, right? Which I don't know. But my assumption is that in Japan, it's really more punishing to fail, right? So both from the legal standpoint. So for example, if your company uh, goes into bankruptcy, that debt follows you as an individual, right? Which is really difficult if you're building a startup, right? The good part is like their interest rate is like 1% a year, right? So they have really good interest rates, but that debt is going to follow you. The second thing is, as a society, if you fail, people frown upon you, right? To the point where there has been like cases of people selling a service, which is basically relocation service for you. So if you are a Japanese that has been like shamed by your community, you can opt in into a service that's going to relocate you to another city for you to start a new life in that city, right? So that kind of incentives like push away Japanese from seeking entrepreneurship, and they find more comfort doing academia, so they can still produce a lot of scientific knowledge, or they feel great like having an umbrella of a big corporation, having Sony Corporation under them, and just going to their boss like, "Hey, boss, I have this idea. Like, is Sony willing to give me the resources in order to execute on this idea?" Right? So that's a little bit of why startups are often foreign funded, or mostly foreign funded, and why like the Japanese population is not taking more risk when it comes to these high risk, high reward companies, right?
It's kind of funny because Silicon Valley, you know, the culture is like the exact opposite. It's like you fail until you succeed. You know, you got to start failing as soon as possible. But Jose, you had some thoughts on this, right?
Yes, I wanted to congratulate our friends because I think this is a beautiful initiative. Also, I lived 3 years in Japan between 2006 and 2009. And it is a fascinating country looking towards the future. And the word Mirai that you haven't mentioned, Mirai means future in Japanese. So I think it's a very fantastic name, Mirai Tech City. So I want to congratulate you. Also, you are truly a global team. Besides your Japanese partners, you, Victoria, you were also born in Venezuela, like myself. Nelson was born in Honduras, and Pedro was born in the Portugal Islands, I believe, in Azores. So it is really, really a global team that you have. So congratulations. Talking about Kobe, I have been to Kobe and to Kyoto, where Dr. Shinya Yamanaka made his discoveries in the year 2006. I visited the Kyoto University in 2008 after he made his discovery, but before he got the Nobel Prize. He got the Nobel Prize in medicine in the year 2012. So I think it is important to keep these dates in context. And now Japan is advancing very fast in longevity therapies because indeed, as you mentioned, Japan is the oldest society in the world. The longest life expectancy in the world is Japan, but Spain is the second one among large countries with over 10 million people. So it is first Japan, then Spain, and there are smaller countries like Hong Kong, Singapore, also Switzerland, that have less than 10 million people with longer life expectancies. But Japan is important because it is really big, over 120 million people, and it still has the longest life expectancy. That has to do, of course, also with the lifestyle, with the food, etc., etc., etc. But Japan is being caught up. Spain is catching up with Japan. In fact, according to some forecasts, by the year 2040, Spain will overtake Japan as the most longevous large country in the world. In any event, this is just to make the connections between Japan and Spain because, Victoria, you are going to be in Madrid with us for International Longevity Day, which is October 1st. October 1st in Madrid. And I will go to Japan in the last week of October, because what you are doing is fantastic and I support it completely. And I plan to be there for the second event and also for the fashion show. I think it's beautiful, the fashion of the future. But I have a question. My question is comparing Mirai Tech City and other similar initiatives. For example, we were all in Vitalia City, which is now called Infinita City, and that was in Prospera, in the island of Roatan in Honduras. Also, before in Susalu in Montenegro, but that has not continued. But we have Vitalia Infinita City. Now we have Viva City, and we have other projects like Immortalis and the US equivalent called Neovia. So how do you differentiate Mirai Tech City from Viva City, Infinita City, Immortalis, Neovia? So my question to you, my dear friends.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm happy to take that. I believe there are two main differences. The first one is we are trying really hard to produce an artifact that it's universally usable, right? So we are doing Mirai Tech as a community initiative. It's going to transition into an NGO. So it's going to be a more open project, a project for believers, for people that are attending the event to be quote unquote co-owners or have this ownership into the project, right? And we are trying to create an artifact that's going to be universal, which is we want to figure out what are the best set of laws or rules that push forward these transhumanist technologies, right? And so even if Japan ends up not being the correct jurisdiction, let's say like Spain opens up regulatory wise and says like, hey, we have an aging crisis too, and we want to solve it, then we would have already produced this source of laws, this source of all the things that you need to do in order to approve technology in a safe manner, in a responsible manner, and in a fast manner, all at the same time. And so you could take it and implement it into Spain. So I think in that sense, we are more open source, more community minded, more community first. When it comes to Japan itself as a location, I believe that it's important to notice that Japan is not starting from scratch. Japan is already a very big jurisdiction. A lot of these projects, they get political buy-in from people by saying like, hey, I want to develop your country, right? They go into a country which economy that have an economy that is really struggling and say like, hey, I can come to your country, I can help you get development through or project through a special economic zone or through changing laws. I think that in Japan it's inverted. It's an hey, you really have an aging population problem. You have a great economy. You have great infrastructure. Let me plug you like just the tech that you need in order to solve this problem, which I think it's going to be like more close to the case in Spain. So just to give you an example, this place in Quebec, they have already invested around $9 billion into clinical infrastructure, right? So it's really difficult to replicate the level of equipment that they have, the quality of the hospitals. It's really difficult to replicate the quality of the manufacturing in a jurisdiction that's starting from scratch, right? And so I think that those are our main differentiators, and the big one is the market. People need it. People are going to buy it. If you deploy in a special economic zone in the Caribbean, you are dependent on people flying in from the US as your only source of revenue, whereas in Japan, you have the third largest market in the world when it comes to medicine, tied in there with the European Union, just below China and the US, right? So you have a huge domestic market, you have economic incentives, and you have great infrastructure to support all of these development from day one, right? So I think that those are like the main difference, I would say.
Yeah. I think if I can add to that, and I echo a little bit of what Nelson is saying. So one big thing, I'm an engineer by trade. So one big thing for me always is, how do you find the better ways to accelerate doing something? So what are those pieces? And I will keep coming back to like ecosystem and those concepts. But for what we wanted to do, which is accelerate, basically cure aging, this is a race against time, literally. So it's a matter of like, okay, so there's this great initiative, and I'm a true believer that each jurisdiction will have its own role in different phases. Not everyone can specialize in everything. So we did Vitalia, for example, and then we did also Viva City, or like help with Viva City. And each one of the, like, San Francisco has its own, San Francisco is fantastic to get investment. You don't get that type of community and investment hub anywhere else right now, right? And then Vitalia had his own role. Like, we had an amazing event where we, like, everyone joined, and like all of these other things stemmed from it, right? So I feel like each jurisdiction has its own role, none of them. And as we grow, we'll find out what specific thing it is. Japan at the moment is the one that we deem the one that has the most amount of ingredients to be able to, like, do this as fast as we can. Even though I think sometimes it sounds like, because like part of like what we're talking about is like, oh, the Japanese are sometimes slower on certain things, but actually we're talking about like them looking in the future, right? And so one thing that I find also very interesting about Japan as the case for this specific, like the one that's going to have one of the key roles in curing aging because of having all those ingredients that we talked about, is that Japan, even though like sometimes from the outside might seem slower, because it's like the question is like, well, if they seem slower, why are they going so fast in all these like therapies that are coming out that we had never heard about before, right? Why is like Yamanaka or Makoto Kuro, my bad. Like having like some of the like most important relevant discoveries in longevity when we're talking about Japan. And something that is quite interesting about them is that they work, instead of being just like an entrepreneur has an idea or a researcher has an idea, it's an individual that has to like start figuring out how to put the ecosystem together. They actually try to start working from the ecosystem perspective. So they go, okay, so they want to do this. You start with the university, which organization can support, and it will take slightly longer. But once those pieces are put together, like Nelson was saying, these are a relationship that lasts decades. And this trust allows for that people for them to experiment and create things as well. So it's just a different way of looking at it. But I think like a big thing for us was where can we find all those ingredients? But ultimately, each area is going to specialize. At some point, we're going to see China having its own role, or we'll understand what role it has within this solving aging, and Africa is going to have its own role. So I would expect actually for other jurisdictions as well to start like appearing, and especially like I think like once we have this like blueprint, it will also help accelerate that, kind of like that guidance.
Victoria, you're an engineer. What's the bottleneck in this process? We want to break the bottleneck, right? What's that? Right?
Regulation. We all know regulation is a huge one. Like we all know this. Actually, like Nelson is fantastic explaining the regulatory aspect. But I mean, like, I sound repetitive. Everyone has heard this loads of times, but the fact that it takes over 10 years to go through the FDA, and it's like this like millions and billions of dollars, and you can have the cure for cancer, and it will take you 10 years after loads of clinical trials to be able to actually like give it to people, because you're trying to see that it's effective as safe at the same time, when actually like the logical thing should be, well, is it going to kill you? Now, then people should have the choice of trying it out and start testing it and be able to collect data. And I mean, like that's just one thing, but like regulation is a huge one. But I think like we all know this. But Nelson is fantastic explaining this part. If you want to take that, Nelson.
Yeah, for sure. I believe that one other like very big bottleneck that people underestimate, and again, I'm not a big expert here. This is a question that has been like moving around the longevity circles for a while now. But the other thing is we don't have enough data capturing mechanisms, right? Testing drugs takes a while. Collecting data takes a while. Having the models that we need in order to create a biotech AI, we are not there yet. There is a lot of base research that needs to be done. There's a lot of data collection that needs to be done. Obviously, it's way more difficult when it comes to the regulation, also like dragging you down. But there are also a lot of base problems that need to be solved that we are slowly solving, right? So a big shout out to everyone that's working right now in organoids and in alternatives way to test medicine, right? They are doing a lot of the heavy lifting right now. They're going to make the field go faster by a lot, and hopefully also through these things like the Japanese regulation, through all this need to create regulatory pathways for personalized medicine, we are also going to be able to take off a little bit of the red tape, right?
Talking about regulation, I would like to add that Europe is overregulated. It's the worst place, I think, because there is regulation and regulation of the regulation. So very complicated situation in Europe. So much that my friend Alex Shaboronkov, the founder and CEO of In Silico Medicine, he said that he wouldn't come to Europe to do any pharmaceutical work, but that he has been going around the world and he has discovered Australia as the best country in terms of regulatory policy right now. And that also a very famous Australian biologist who is at Harvard, David Sinclair. David Sinclair has also been lobbying the government of Australia. So Australia has been opening up to new forms of pharmaceutical development, allowing regulation to be very simple. So I don't know if you are aware of any of these happening in Australia, also as a possibility to learn from, to work with, or to move there later.
Yeah, for sure. And Australia is really, really strong when it comes to phase one development, especially. They have the cheapest, most reputable phase one trials. So yeah, they are great. They have been putting a lot of effort, and it's a great middle point between Japan and the US. So great for international cooperation too, right?
To give credit where credit's due, I think the FDA, there's one cool thing they did recently. There's a drug that got approved, Lipfendra. It's an oral PCSK9. And during stage 3 of it, there was some sort of special edict put out to pass it really quick. But it's sort of a unique situation since the LDL hypothesis with cholesterol is all, very well established, and we already have the injectable PCSK9s on the market. So I feel like the FDA is maybe getting a little bit better. I think we're putting pressure on them with all these special economic zones. So like, okay, we gotta speed up a little bit. So it's one of those drugs where it was like dead simple to approve, and it has so much benefit in reducing the LDL. I used Repatha for a while, so I mean I know my LDL just so tanked. So they're making a little progress, I guess.
Yeah, I think that also it's important to think about structural changes and not just like incremental changes, because I think what's really beautiful about the Japanese regulation is that they created a whole alternative regulatory pathway. So Japan has their FDA equivalent that's called the PMDA, and the PMDA is also slow. It has their own like good things. They have great regulatory pathways. They are also really reputable. So if the PMDA approves you, it means that your science is great. It means that you have done your homework. It means that all jurisdictions can trust you. But
Did you say PMDA?
PMDA, yeah, it's
What is this?
Pharmaceutical and Medical Devices Act, PMDA. Um, and so the cool thing is that they have their own FDA, right? And they say like, hey, we need to accelerate regenerative medicine, right? So instead of going into like an incremental, like, hey, let's do this through the PMDA, they came up and created a new system, which is called the ASRM, which is the Act of Safety on Regenerative Medicine, and this is a pathway exclusive for regenerative medicine, where they gave the power to certain independent review boards, certain committees that are generally like college backed, the ability to approve new therapeutics to be sold into the market as soon as safety data was cleared, right? So you can imagine it kind of the US equivalent would be that Harvard and MIT and had a board of professors that would be able to give approvals as the FDA for certain like categories of therapeutics, right? Like a board of specialists from MIT, and a board of specialists from Harvard, and a board of specialists from Yale. Like you have in Japan, there's over 300 different committees that can approve this. So you can imagine like 300 different entities across the US that would be able to come and say like, hey, you know, for regenerative medicine, these therapeutics are going to be approved for sale directly to consumers, right? Which I think it's more systematic, if that makes sense, than just like giving more responsibility or more authority to the PMDA.
Yes, indeed. Thank you for that discussion. And indeed, there is more flexibility in Japan from a regulatory standpoint to be able to test new therapies and new drugs in the wider patient population after they've passed the basic safety trials through the PMDA. So the efficacy data can actually be gathered while the treatment is being marketed. And in many cases, that's actually a better way to gather information than the standard double-blind placebo-controlled clinical trials, because many of the conditions of those trials are artificial. And a lot of longevity advocates have even complained often those trials are not done in the same populations as would be likely to receive those drugs. Like if the trials are done in 30 to 50-year-olds and the drugs are going to be given to 80-year-olds, then the trial data may not show certain crucial information about how the drugs will work in 80-year-olds. Now, what you mentioned, Nelson, is also very interesting, that Japan doesn't have the same kind of venture capital culture that the United States does, and the venture capital model tends to go for the big bets that may or may not succeed, but they're often all or nothing, and they require vast amounts of funding. But there are a lot of technological innovations that work at smaller scales. And as you mentioned, they could make everyday life more convenient. These would be like your robot waiters, for instance, or little technological gadgets that will help you with day-to-day tasks, but maybe there's not a multi-billion-dollar market for them. But you or I could pay, say, $15 each for the convenience, and somebody could have a multi-million-dollar business doing that, or even a large corporation might say, okay, this is one of our products and we have hundreds of products, and we'll be willing to throw a little bit of money for this consumer convenience. So I do think there's a lot of merit to that approach, actually. So the venture capital approach risks a lot. And I've often talked about the startup runway problem in the United States, where you could have a brilliant idea, but if you're not able to secure vast amounts of funding for it, then your startup might only have anywhere from a few months to a few years of runway. And if you can't get funded in that time frame, you have to pivot. So to avoid that pivot, sometimes people try to start smaller businesses that are more sustainable at a smaller scale. But in Silicon Valley, they're kind of derided as so life businesses. I like the lifestyle businesses. I think that's often a better way to go from the standpoint of building something that will last at the scale at which consumers will benefit from it. So I do see your point about the Japanese business ecosystem being different. I think in certain ways that difference might actually lead to consumers getting sooner access to various technologies, as we're seeing in Japan, because the everyday infrastructure does appear to be more technologically advanced there, based on what I am aware of. But we have a lot of audience members who have been to Japan, actually, and Kevin Branciforti is one of them. He says the robot waiters there are amazing. And he also said that in Japan, the future has arrived. So very interesting observations there. He believes that Japan's economy will get a boost when 1% of the world comes there to get new teeth and hopefully other biomedical treatments. But there is an ongoing thread of dialogue in our chat about how well acquainted Japanese people are with other languages. So Mike Lazine writes, I'm curious as to how many of the Japanese are bi or trilingual, because if they're going to be one of the main countries for transhumanism, being able to speak more than one language would help. And he has heard that a lot of Japanese are mostly monolingual, but Kevin writes that he found many younger Japanese people happy to communicate in English. He also writes that older Japanese cab drivers can communicate in English rather well, but via their phones. And he further writes that you will be able to communicate with older Japanese people. They understand English and their communication skills sometimes exceed his own. So it's interesting. There are different impressions, but what are your impressions having lived in Japan?
Yeah.
So the first one is that you would be surprised of how many words they have borrowed from English. So it's kind of easy to get by. There are a lot of English words that they use in their day-to-day way life. So, for example, if you go into a coffee shop to ask for hot coffee, you ask for hotokohi, right? So it's just hot coffee with the Japanese way of saying it, with the Japanese pronunciation, like adapted. So that's one. The second one is their language is very different from the way that we speak English, the way that we speak Spanish, the way that we speak our languages, from a structural perspective, right? It's a high context language. It's also a language that can transmit a lot in very few words, because it relies on you as a person to interpret what the other person is trying to say. So that's one thing that makes it difficult for them to learn a new language, right? I have this anecdote of a Japanese friend that he's really big on cryptocurrencies. He's amazing. His name is Masa Nakatsu. Successful entrepreneur, really really nice guy. He was telling us about how people in Japan, for example, imagine that you have your house there with your kids and they are being noisy. Your neighbor is going to come over and is going to tell you you have very wonderful kids, like very energetic, like their piano playing is getting better. just as a way of trying to tell you, like, knock it off, like you're being too loud, right? So they have like these ways that you need to not just be able to translate, but to culturally translate what they're trying to say. That being said, they're increasingly learning new languages. I have been surprised by people talking to me in Spanish, right? um, I have been in a taxi speaking in Spanish just to have the taxi driver say goodbye in Spanish, right? Which was kind of scary as I use Spanish, because I believe they are not going to understand me. But also, I think a very big piece of transhumanist tech that Victoria is actually using a lot is live translation glasses, right? So I don't know if you want to expand on that, Victoria, with us.
Yeah. So I've had the, I guess, like the blessing that I was an interesting kid, and I learned Japanese when I was a child. So even though my Japanese is not as good right now, it has allowed me to understand better the way that they communicate and the culture. So that has made it much easier for us to be in Japan. Like, I never imagined that Japan was going to be the place where I was going to be able to do what I want to do, and so here we are. I think, like Nelson is saying, like 100%. What I recommend for people going to Japan, and highly recommended, just because of it's easier. I think it's a little bit easier for us. Also because we're going there, is to understand a little bit about how their culture works, because I think that's more difficult. With the glasses, though, I had a full meeting with 10 people from government last week. And I got these glasses from Daniel Berger, who's also doing some things here in Japan. They're called Ever something. I have to just I'll find it and put it on the chat in a second. But they do live translation. They don't have cameras, so they're not invasive in a meeting. They don't see anything, but they're fantastic. And so for having meetings, those are great. And I think the other thing is that there's so many solutions right now that the difficult part is not understanding the language per se, it's understanding the culture. And that has to do with having those interactions and reading a little bit behind and getting informed on what you're supposed to do, like the way that they say things, or like what the story that Nelson is saying. But right now, I just got the new iPhone only because they have live translation when you do phone calls. So I have had the situation where I cannot communicate something that I want over the phone. I was like, you know what? I'm done with that. Cut the phone, and now I'm just going to be doing the live translations when I call. And I think there's lots of different solutions. Honestly, what I encourage people to do is find those solutions and read a little bit about their culture. In fact, a lot of things are much easier right now because of that. Even we're having to do a lot of documentation in Japanese. You do them with AI. Then you double check them with someone that speaks Japanese, of course, but it's so much easier nowadays. So right now is a really good time to go there and do these things.
This is fascinating and very fitting for a transhumanist salon, since the discussion has been about how technology can overcome the language barrier, and the instant translation glasses are quite intriguing to me. Indeed, please do share what product it is, because I may find it useful during my forthcoming trip to Europe. So I too will be in attendance at the International Longevity Summit in Madrid. This is in late September, early October, September 28th to October 1st. So this is going to be helpful to me there. And afterward, I will be going to the Healthy Longevity Conference in Slovenia. And I do not know either Spanish or Slovene, I must confess. So perhaps these glasses will help me there. But Victoria did share the name of the company. It is called Even Realities.
Yeah, they're actually a company of Shenzhen, funnily enough. But they are really great. And I mean, I can't wait to have a chip implanted in my brain to do that. instead of having glasses. But in the meantime, we can use the glasses.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we are getting close to the Star Trek Universal Translator technology with AI, and AI being able to be integrated into these kinds of technologies that can take in audio in real time, process it, and convey it to the person who seeks the translation. So this is quite fascinating. And Art Ramon, I wonder if at this stage you have some questions for our guests.
Yeah, I was thinking if there's any way you can sort of do like a biomedical poly market, just bring in more money, bring in more interest into this community. I don't know, just a thought, throwing it out there.
Yeah, I believe that has been tried before, kind of through tokenization of IP-ish. I have heard the idea floating around, definitely. But yeah, if anyone in the audience is interested in executing on that, we're happy to help you navigate if you want to do it in Japan.
All right, thank you. And the International Longevity Summit in Madrid can be accessed here at longevitysummitmadrid.com. So those of you who are interested in attending, I would recommend going there. Of course, we in the Transhumanist Party streamed 5 sessions of presentations from the 2025 International Longevity Summit from Madrid. So this will be my first time attending in person, and Victoria will be there and Jose will be there. So this will be quite a fascinating set of people to converge in one location. Now, I wanted to ask Victoria and Nelson more about the housing situation in Japan, because I think this is of prime importance to a lot of Westerners. We have an insane housing affordability crisis in many Western countries. The United States, I'm quite familiar with because I spent most of my life here, and I remember in the 1990s, in the 2000s, even in the midst of the housing bubble, a lot of the country was still affordable. It's just the major metropolitan areas and their suburbs had skyrocketing housing prices, and then those housing prices crashed, thankfully, because some people, myself included, were able to buy houses during the Great Recession. But now it seems like because of major obstacles to new housing construction in the United States, housing has become unaffordable even for upper middle class people in a lot of locations, even locations that were formerly much more affordable, formerly half as expensive as they are now. But in Japan, there is this IKEA situation where there are millions of unoccupied houses, and for whatever reason, a lot of Japanese people are moving into the larger cities, just the few largest cities, and in the other cities, housing is becoming very readily and cheaply available. So if you could talk more about that, and if you could talk more about how easy is it for a foreigner to get a house, because I understand it's almost impossible for a foreigner to be considered a Japanese citizen. So if you buy a house as a foreigner, how secure is your purchase? Are you able to own this house for 30 years if you would like?
Yeah. Okay. Great. That's actually great. Great question, and it's another one of the like what we were saying before. Like, why Japan? This is one of the many like ingredients that make Japan such a great option. So, for context, following what you just mentioned, Japan, because the population is shrinking, that we talked about before, there are about 9 million houses that are abandoned available in the market, and it's expected to go to 20 million million, not billion, sorry, million, in like 10 years, something around those lines. I can't remember the exact date, but there's more people dying. Younger population are going to Osaka and Tokyo, mainly Tokyo. So you have like all of these houses are empty that families don't even like want to deal with them because of the paperwork, which I always like to see the opportunity on problems. Sorry, I just started to get a call. So what's happening there is that right now you have all these areas where you can get a house either for free to whatever it is, in all of these parts around Japan. Now, when I say you can get them for free, or you can get them for like $10, $100, $1,000, $15,000, it's not that they're going to be perfect. They're very dependent on so many things. So the more outside of a city it is, the cheaper it will be, and it will probably also be correlated to the conditions that it is. So you have to remember that whatever you buy, you'll probably have to do some renovation. Some of them are from the 70s. Some of them are even from before that. We have a friend that bought one that was like 300 years old, which is absolutely beautiful. And so they're fairly inexpensive. A foreigner can definitely buy them. We have many friends that have bought houses. You can buy them freehold or leasehold. I highly recommend you to buy it. I think, like in my experience, you buy the land, because the thing is about the houses in Japan, they depreciate, especially because of earthquakes. But I think actually that the houses are more of a purpose. So if you want to do a business or have a community there, I mean, there's a whole project called Su Japan that they even bought a school that was abandoned. I think they bought the school. I can't remember if they finished buying the school, but they bought a supermarket. So it's like all this like available infrastructure that you can either like buy and fix, or you can just take that and keep the land. But yes, a foreigner can definitely buy it. There's several companies that do everything, especially because it's in Japanese. I put one in the chat called Akiya Air that belongs to a friend of ours. He is fantastic, and he does everything from you. He specializes in this, in the buying, the purchase, the finding it, the purchase, and also the maintenance. And just to give you an example, a house, for example, in Osaka, near the city center, you could buy it for like four like bedrooms. You can buy for around. I really like going on those websites. You really can buy it for like $15,000. Then that means that the taxes per year are going to be like $200, I think. So also the taxes are not as high. It's all very dependent. Now, like the big question, is the government going to take it away from you? No, it's your house. The other second question, is it going to give me a visa? Because I've actually had this asked. No, it will not give you a visa. If anything, like maybe, may not, you can put it as an Airbnb, but I don't know if that an Airbnb business allows you to have a visa. But it will go down in price because they devaluate in Japan. So, but a lot of people, at least like in my lifetime, I never imagined owning a house. For example, and a lot of people are like me from my generation and the generations that follow. So it's a really great opportunity if you're looking to have a place in a beautiful area that will belong to you. I mean, Japan is open, and there's going to be even more, or not. Maybe we will solve aging before that happens, and actually there will not be that many. So
very interesting. And this is a fascinating opportunity. And again, there are websites that help people with this. AkiaAir.com is the one that Victoria shared. Now, Kevin Bransaforti writes, in his experience, free houses are rarely a bargain and they have high repair costs, but many houses at reasonable cost but decent condition are a better deal than the free houses. So he would recommend looking at those that have a modest price tag but still affordable to many Westerners. Now, it's interesting, too, that the Japanese seem to have a more rational view of housing as a consumption good rather than an investment good. And this has been a major sticking point of mine with regard to how Americans view their houses. A lot of them view their houses as assets that not only they expect to appreciate, but they think they have a right to have them appreciate, even if they're like worn, broken down, tract homes from the 1950s. They expect those houses to rise in value. And the way a lot of them unfortunately behave to make that happen is they join the so-called NIMBY movement. NIMBY stands for Not in My Backyard. And they actively lobby against the construction of new housing in that area so that housing is artificially scarce, and therefore existing homes, even if they're outdated, they're of low quality, they have maintenance issues, they still skyrocket in price just because people need somewhere to live. So
That
in
happened
Japan,
in
it
your
seems like,
area in Nevada, right? Isn't that happened
oh
right
yes,
where you lived?
that happened to a great extent in Nevada because there was a major construction slowdown after the collapse of the housing market in the late 2000s. And yes, there are neighborhoods where there are essentially wealthy elderly people. And in the parts of Nevada where I live, they're generally wealthy elderly partisan Republicans, but in places like San Francisco, they're wealthy elderly partisan Democrats who essentially show up in droves to any kind of county commissioners meeting or city council meeting, whatever the case may be, when they're trying to decide on whether a new housing development is allowed. And they come up with myriad possible objections like, oh, this will increase traffic in the area, or this will have whatever environmental impact they assert it's going to have, or have you thought about whether the sidewalks are going to be wide enough? And they can derail the construction of the new housing development for years. But why are they really doing it? Because they've been treating their homes as a piggy bank and often taking home equity loans out against them. And as a result, they are really worried about the prices of those homes declining. But I think a reasonable expectation is to treat a house like a car. Yes, it's going to depreciate because the physical materials are not going to last forever unless you maintain them. So if you maintain a classic car in really good condition, it's going to keep its value as an asset. But if you don't, if you treat it just as an ordinary vehicle, then yes, it will depreciate. But it seems like in Japan, they don't have that problem at all. So what is it like in terms of new home construction or updates to existing homes? Is it often the case that homes are rebuilt using more modern construction materials, or in areas where there's still housing demand that new houses get constructed routinely?
They are big on prefab, actually, which is interesting. But it also depends. Kind of, Tokyo is this big magnet, right, of people. Tokyo is just so big as a city and so well designed and so well thought of that a lot of people from all over the country just flock to Tokyo as a place to live. So real estate prices in Tokyo can be really high, and most people live in apartments in Tokyo. But when it comes to other areas of the country, even smaller cities like Osaka is not small, but it's smaller than Tokyo. You see a lot of new construction using prefab houses. All right, so they are big on that. There's also a lot of verticality. They build even like small buildings, like 5-6 floors high, for apartments. So that's also big. But you also have the other thing that a lot of houses have story behind them, and people really preserve it. Japanese are big on family and like passing down this kind of things. So if you are like wandering around, you may find like houses that were built like in the 600s that belong to a samurai family, that they are still proud of their lineage, and they have kept their home and they have repaired it and they have maintained it because it represents their own family history, right? So you can also find that. So it's that balance is interesting, right? I don't know if that.
Yeah. I think the other thing is that as they devaluate some of the changes and fixes that they do, I mean, like they might not be that they're gonna put like how we do sometimes in the West, that you're like, oh, I'm gonna have this like marble whatever, and just like make all this expensive, because ultimately, yeah, it will depreciate. And then also there's lots of earthquakes. Even though there's lots of earthquakes, they're really well built to like withstand those earthquakes. Like the way that they're built, their flexibility are actually pretty good. But yeah, I just wanted to add something. So like as part of this like fun experiment of Mirai Tech City, there's a group trying to buy. So we found a little building in Kobe that it's about $300,000. That's what it costs. With taxes, it gets to 400, like close to 400,000. It's 7 floors. And we're trying to make a group to buy it. So every time people go there, they can just stay there and pay rent. So like, again, it becomes a source of income for whoever's buying it, rather than just forget it. It's not going to appreciate. So if anyone's interested into like getting into the group of co-buying for Mirai, I mean, it's not going to be for Mirai, but for whoever buys it. But just to have one there for the researchers and the community, there's a group trying to buy one. And it's a building. It's hilarious. $300,000. It's so cheap, and it's in such a good state. And this is the sort of thing. And it's in Kobe, which is a city, right? It's insane.
Did you say it's a 7-story building for $300,000?
$300,000, but it's a bit narrow. It's narrow, but it's still 7 floors. I think it's 7 floors. If it's not 7, because it was like 147 and we're like 5 floors. But anyway, like we have a chat. If you want to take a look, go to Mirai City. There's a chat and there's like a whole like IKEA buyers. But we're looking at little buildings. But there's stuff like that, and the more you go into the I mean, for us, it's important to be close to the infrastructure. Again, the same idea of like, because it's not about like one thing. It's not just regulation. It's not just is the infrastructure, like everything in the same place to be able to accelerate, right? But if someone wants to go and buy something in the middle of like nowhere, it's still going to be well connected because they have trains, and you can buy these like beautiful, beautiful big houses for $10,000, $20,000. So it depends. Like some people like the rural side.
Yes, that is astonishing to think that a natural person with fairly typical means, a lot of Americans have $400,000 or $300,000, can afford to purchase a multi-story building and own it outright.
Oh, yeah.
That's remarkable.
Yeah, there was even a hotel, a big ryokan that they were selling in Gifu for $50,000. Gifu is a beautiful area. Airport is far away, but a ryokan, it's like a place where you stay, like a hotel, like a big traditional house with a lot of rooms. It was $50,000. So yeah, have fun, guys. Move to Japan.
Astonishing. So Kevin Bransaforti writes, one reason for the expectation of depreciation has to do with the history of earthquakes, which you mentioned, that the Japanese don't expect the buildings to last forever, and a lot of them have wooden construction and are vulnerable to termites. He also points out that in Japan, they do invest in real estate the way we do, but it's for the land value. So they're not as averse to construction as a result of that, because it's the land that keeps the value more so than buildings, and therefore they're not opposed to the buildings going up on somebody else's land. So very interesting. Now, Kevin also read somewhere that in order to live in Japan, sometimes one may be able to own a house but may not be able to live there year round. So are you aware of certain arrangements where you can go to Japan and you have some sort of time limited visa or tourist status, but you can still own property there?
For sure. You can own property as a tourist there, and you are allowed into the country for 180 days a year. So half of the year, 6 months, you can spend in Japan. Japan is also really relaxed when it comes to tourists, right? Like they allow you into their country, especially if you have a history of travel. Like they have never asked me any question. They see that I come and go. They don't question it. They always give me like the standard 90 days per visit. You can even extend it to 180 days without leaving the country by going to an immigration office. And they do have a high variety of different like long-term visas. They have a language learning visa that if you fulfill like some basic requirements and you express your interest of learning Japanese by being in Japan, they issue you a 1-year permission to stay in the country. If you state that you want to start a company, you can get up to 2 years without like any requirement whatsoever other than a pitch deck and financial projection. This is different from the business manager visa, which recently changed. This is the startup visa, and the startup visa is at a local government level. So you need to engage like with your local town hall, right, instead of the central government. Then there's the business manager visa, that basically you need to do an investment into the country, which by the way, if you want to buy a building, you likely pass the threshold of the investment that's need to be done into the country. I believe it's around $200,000 that you need to invest into the country. Like it's not that you pay it, it's that you put it into an asset, or that you put it into the country in some way, right? So that gives you you can renew it on a year by year basis. Then you have the highly talented visa, which depends on you having like a master's degree, some level of proficiency in a specific field, that you have some accolades, that you have been invited as a speaker to events, etc. And then like the most common one, I believe it's marrying someone from Japan, right? That's most of our friends that live there full time, that have their citizenship.
Interesting. Yes. And I really appreciate that overview of the various kinds of visas and access available to foreigners. Of course, Kevin Branciforte does write, the visa rules are subject to change. And
Also, we're not lawyers.
Right. Reef D'Souza wonders, what if the Japanese at some point become anti-foreigner and change the rules? And I don't know how likely that is, but I'm curious to ask your opinion as foreigners who have resided in Japan. And Jose, please feel free to opine on this as well. How have you been treated in large part in your day-to-day lives in Japan? Do you feel that the Japanese culture and society and the legal system in particular are sufficiently tolerant of foreigners that they will say, okay, you're a foreigner, you'll never be Japanese, but we like you anyway?
Yeah. So I think that number one, the Japanese are some of the kindest people that you're going to find. I have this memory of myself arriving really late into Tokyo, and I had some business meeting early in the morning. I couldn't figure out like the train system. Like I needed to do like a weird change from one like train station to another one, and I just asked like a random kid on the street, and he just took my luggage with him and come on with me. I'm going to take you, and he left me like just in front of the railway, right? So in that sense, the Japanese people are in general kind. I have never had a problem with them. Some of foreigner friends that are living in Japan full time, they said that the Japanese, they are not racist. Like it's easy to perceive them as that because they are protective about their culture and their social norms. So as foreigners, we tend to be louder. We tend to speak on the phone without like paying much attention to it. And there are just a lot of implicit social norms of where are you allowed to be noisy, right? Like where are you allowed to have a loud conversation? Where are you allowed to have a phone call? And so all of these things, you can get bad looks if you're not following their social norms, right? So it's not generally tolerable for you to go and do small talk with people. Like there are very few scenarios where that is socially acceptable. So if you go around doing small talk, they're going to look bad at you, and it's not because you're a foreigner, it's because you are disrespecting their social order, right? So that's from one perspective. From our perspective, like, they are really considerate when it comes to accommodating people. Or all of their train station have signage in English. It's really easy to navigate. It's easier to navigate than South Korea, that I have been there too. They have put more thought and effort into how to accommodate like people that don't speak their language. That being said, for people that have been living there for 10, 15, 20 years, they can develop like these resentment of, I am not Japanese, right? Like, I have been living here for 10, 15 years, and people still treat me as a tourist, as a foreigner in this country, which I feel it's like home at this point. But it's not. I'm not Japanese. I was not born here, right? So some like elite social circles, right? Some doors will remain closed because you were not born there, and that can feel bad for some people, especially if they have spent most of their life living in Japan, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's very important too when you go to Japan to go with the right mentality. Like, you're never gonna be Japanese. It's never gonna happen. It's not like, so like I've lived in the UK, so I'm from Venezuela originally, but I spent my whole life in the UK, and I have a British passport, and people do see me more like an equal, even though I don't have the accent, but I don't feel a difference, and I'm never treated as different. In Japan, I say like positive, it's like positive and negative. So you're never going to be Japanese, but at the same time, that allows you also, there's some extra flexibility when it comes to following the rules. So if a Japanese were to do certain mistakes, cultural mistakes that we do, like, we get forgiven, and this is also really useful in business, because there are things that we're just not aware of, right? Or maybe not all the time thinking. So we do get those like passes, and they really accommodate many times for us. But you have to go with the idea that I'm never going to be Japanese. But having said that, the younger generations, it feels a bit more natural because they're speaking English, and then there's so many foreigners as well that you like. If you want to feel a belonging, you'll find your community. I mean, like, things like what we're doing hopefully help with that. Those, like, bringing those communities together and having like a space. But yeah, they're incredibly kind, and but I think it's the same thing that I said before. Like, it's good research before. I mean, like, the community in Mirai, some of them are in Japan, some of them are not in Japan, but they've been to Japan. So it's always good to just research before. And as long as there's a lot of respect and trust. So, like, you're never going to feel that, well, at least that someone's going to try to take advantage of you, because that's not culturally good. There's a lot of even respect for the seller in terms of, like, you don't haggle. So it's very different. But if you break some of those norms, they will feel disrespected.
Understood. And in our chat, Kevin Bransaforti writes, Japanese are very kind and considerate, so consistent with what you said, Victoria, and they will judge you based on behavior. They will guide you if you are unintentionally breaking their rules. So very interesting observations. Jose, I'm curious as to what you have observed in this regard, if you would like to share.
Yeah, sure. I'm sorry that my video is not working, but I had a great time in Japan. As I mentioned, I lived almost 3 years, and between 2006 and 2009, the Japanese are indeed very, very polite people. They would help you all the time. Also, even if they didn't seem to speak English, they did speak English, but they are so perfectionist that unless they can speak fluently, they prefer not to speak, which is quite curious. In many other countries, some people try to speak English or another language, even if half-baked. But the Japanese, no, they are so perfectionist that they prefer not to talk than to speak badly. But they use a lot of electronic devices, so they write what they want to say, so they can always communicate. And again, very friendly. I had a fantastic time, and I love Japanese food. Japanese food is fantastic. And you can see one of the reasons that the Japanese are the longest living people is because of their diet. And they are very thin people. The Japanese are probably the thinnest people in the world, not because they are starving, but because they just eat enough. Except for the sumo players who really are fat, and they are fat on purpose. The Japanese are basically very slim people. And I wish the whole planet would follow that example, to be slim throughout their lives. Even in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, when most Westerners are beginning to get fat, the Japanese remain slim. And I think that that's an example to the world. So, I support Mirai Tech. I plan to be in that fantastic experience and accelerate the process towards more longevity, better longevity. And Japan is one of the leading countries, so we hope it will help to move this forward.
Yes, thank you very much, Jose. I really appreciate your remarks and your exhortation toward healthy living. And I do think a lot of the world can learn from the Japanese lifestyles and habits. Even adding a few years to our life expectancies can help us take advantage of the technologies that are on the horizon that could enable us to benefit from biomedical rejuvenation. So the healthy lifestyle is a bridge toward that. And also, Jose, we have another link from you for the International Longevity Summit Madrid. Jose recommends using this one. It's longevitysummit.madrid. So for those who are interested, please check it out. And now I wanted to ask Victoria to share some of her thoughts about systems thinking and perhaps how a lack of systems thinking can be a limitation sometimes to the spread of the longevity science and medicine ecosystem that we're trying to cultivate.
Thank you. I think we kind of touch on this anyway in different parts, but I think like in this movement, as like I've seen, so I've been working, like I mentioned, with like different ecosystems in terms of innovation for the past 10 years, a bit more than 10 years actually. And it's been like it's always like at a country level or regional level, always someone's trying to solve a problem. But the main issue that throughout my experience I've seen, and this is part of like we apply to longevity. So longevity, that's aging, is a problem, right? So how do you solve it? And so if we stop thinking about just like, okay, so regulation, we need to have better regulation. Yeah, that's true. Regulation is a bottleneck. But the thing about this, like, how do we solve this problem? And this is why I think I was talking about like the different pieces in Japan, is that I think that sometimes we make the mistake, and this happens over and over again, not only longevity, with other different problems. Like, how do we solve hunger? How do we solve lack of scale-ups in a country, or whatever is the problem that we're trying to solve? It has to be seen more as a systems problem rather than just like an individual thing. And it's also like with longevity as well. It's not an individual thing that's going to make us live forever. It's going to be a combination of things. So what are those like systematically structural things that we need to have really in place to be able to solve aging? And part of this is not only like having them in place, but each one of the people involved, like stakeholders involved, really knowing what they're supposed to be doing. I've had multiple conversations where it's like a question mark, actually in Japan with different ecosystem players. Like, well, they're trying to create and incentivize like business development entrepreneurs. How do we create entrepreneurs? But it's about, okay, so if you want to create entrepreneurs, then like what are the VCs supposed to be doing? How are they supposed to be helping? And I think in terms of longevity, it's also right now the lack of understanding of like, everyone wants to help. Like, how do we help? Like, where am I supposed to put all my resources and time to be able to help? Like, what is a part of the system that I'm supposed to be the most impactful in to be able to move the needle? And this is an exercise and something that I think as a longevity community, because as Jose was saying, like we've been in Vitalia, we've been in Prospera, we've been in Viva City, we've been in Social, we're going to all of these places. But I truly believe that all of these experiences, yes, they're incredibly beneficial. We're all getting together, and there's magic that happens when you have high density of very smart people together doing things. But then now I think the question comes into, well, what are we trying, like, what exactly are we trying to do? So LBF came up with some of the technologies that we're supposed to be following and a pathway, and that is fantastic. But that's just one ingredient. And then you have other people working in the regulations. That's just one ingredient. But then how does that all look together in a long-term vision of how do we really accelerate this? Because we are really running out of time. And this is, people are dying, right? So how do we really like move the needle? And this is part of like why we're thinking of Mirai and Japan the way that we're thinking. Now, is Japan going to be the place where longevity, it's where everything happens and we cure full aging? Well, I hope so, but it's not going to be one thing. It's going to be all their ecosystem play, all the jurisdictions, figuring out like how they collaborate together to really make that happen. And within each one of the jurisdictions, thinking really about systems. And I'm hopefully this is because I'm trying to put a lot of like ideas together into one. But if we start thinking that way and how the ecosystem interacts with each other and what is each stakeholder supposed to do and what are the pieces that you're supposed to have, such as infrastructure, the community is a big one that we're trying to get. And where do you get it from? And we know right now, entrepreneurs are not in Japan. We need more entrepreneurs in Japan. Let's bring the entrepreneurs. And then here you have infrastructure and research. How do we put all together in which part of I guess like the life of like solving the problem, which is aging, to be able to really organize and systematically make this happen. And I think that's something that really important as the longevity community and the transhumanist community and the biotech community to like really organize ourselves into this like system and start to think about solving these problems, thinking about systems. So that's what I wanted to add about systems. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate those thoughts, and I think it's important for people within our community to reflect on essentially the broader system of our movement, however you want to define it, whether you want to call it transhumanism or longevity or immortalism even, or some people might call it health span, whatever words you use for it. How do you see it progressing in the future, and where do you see key needs that are being unmet that you can meet with your skill set, and where do you see individual projects or organizations falling within that movement? What do you see as their roles? And Victoria, you touched on that before in response to Jose's question about the various longevity startup cities or special zones. So for instance, we have Infinita City in Honduras and Prospera. We have Viva City, which is currently based in Frontier Tower in San Francisco, but they're looking for a country to partner with for building a true longevity city. And then we have Neovia, aka Immortalis, which is looking to build essentially a free economic zone for longevity research in the United States. And there are other projects too, and Mirai Tech City fits into this ecosystem by pursuing this build out of our community in Japan and create bridges with not just Japanese scientists and the Japanese research ecosystem, but also the regulatory environment there, which is quite welcoming to these experimental drugs and therapies. So there are also organizations, and some of them are for-profit companies, others are non-profits. So for instance, in April, I became the chair of the board of LEVF, the Longevity Escape Velocity Foundation, which was founded by Dr. Aubrey de Grey. And LEVF, importantly, is a nonprofit, philanthropically focused organization that tries to fill crucial gaps within the longevity ecosystem. So we have a lot of basic research in the longevity ecosystem, and we have a lot of companies, startups that are now forming, trying to commercialize one particular type of therapy. But there's not a lot in between. There's not a lot of that intermediate research into the feasibility of particular damage repair approaches. And that's what LEVF focuses on right now in mice in terms of combination mouse lifespan studies, the robust mouse rejuvenation sequence of studies. So all of those are important. And then, of course, there's the advocacy dimension, the political dimension, the policy dimension, what the US Transhumanist Party is focusing on, the community building dimension. And we're doing some of that here in the salons with sharing with our audience all of these various initiatives and the people involved in them, and what Jose is doing in Madrid with his longevity summits that bring together a large segment of our community. So having that overview leads people to think, well, how can I help? Where are my efforts best directed? So I think that's really important. And this is something people should be thinking of as they leave the discussion here in the coming days, weeks, months, years, because that's how we build our movement. So thank you very much in regard to that. And Victoria also points out that Mirai is currently collaborating with Viva City and is supported by the LEV Foundation. So thank you very much for bringing that up. And now, since we are coming to the close of our salon today, I wanted to ask our panelists if you have any final questions for our guests, either Zach or Art Ramon, anything that you've been wanting to ask.
Yeah, we were talking about like phases for different medical stuff, you know, the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. One thing I've been kind of interested in recently that's been occupying my mind is DAOs, or the decentralized autonomous organizations. And they have the ability to get money put into projects that are like high risk, high reward, but it's where I'm seeing a lot of the coolest stuff. Like VitaDAO is working on some stuff for mitophagy, which is one reason I'm kind of doing a keto diet right now, or a fast. We've got HydraDAO, that one of the companies they founded bisected the spine of a pig and used fusogens to get it together, and the pig is walking now. Imagine that for people that can't walk, that have had a spinal injury. CryoDAO is working on freezing a rat and then regenerating it using certain heating and recooling procedures that I think were developed by Greg Fahey. But I wonder if there's a place for that in Mirai for the beginning fundings of stuff, because it seems like maybe you guys are thinking big picture, like getting big biotech companies over there straight away just for the regulatory benefits. But I wonder if there's any place for, or if it'd be even needed to have some decentralized like blockchain technology built in, which I'm just starting to learn about. But I'm seeing some cool stuff developed by these organizations that are just here in terms of what they're funding, at least, and what they've accomplished.
Well, one of those companies, like we're under NDA, so I cannot say anything, but one of those are working with us already, not in the Mirai Tech, but on the on-chain bio side. So at least one of them, you can expect them to be in Japan. For the rest, I think it's crypto is a lot of regulatory arbitrage, like shopping around for the best jurisdiction and learning how to handle like really complex legal incorporations, right? Um, State of the art, I believe, for legal purposes, is to have your DAO in Panama, constituted in Panama. Panama has the best legal system right now for handling DAOs. That being said, Japan is increasingly becoming more crypto friendly. The thing with Japan, they try to run with Bitcoin as a legal tender for a while, and apparently there were some shady things going on, and so they decided to pull the plug altogether on Bitcoin. So people talk about this like one day they decided to approve it, and so the next day you had like a lot of crypto ATMs and a lot of infrastructure. Then months down the road, they issued a cancellation, and the next day, the very next day, everything was gone, like if it was never there, right? So
Fascinating.
the Japan
The
has
law
really
can just
zones.
change and everything goes in a snap.
Yeah, they are really fast with that things. So they have been trying through special economic zones to do crypto stuff, as well as robotics, as well as AI. So we'll see where that lands. But yeah, uh, a lot of legit organizations in that space. I believe the most smart way to go about it is to have the DAO itself in Panama and be able to funnel those funds into research in Japan if you're doing research in Japan, or into market entry in Japan if you're doing that. Ultimately, maybe through a US entity, not a lawyer, not legal advice. But I believe that there's obviously like space of collaboration across different countries in order to make that happen, right?
I've got so many more questions, but I'd better defer to the other panelists as we're running out of time.
Yes. So Art Ramon, any final questions or comments?
Just a thought that maybe you could also sponsor some creation of murals in the economic zone that are specifically themed with the biomedical. You know, just a thought. You already have the fashion part. You need the mural part. Thank you.
For sure. Art is really important.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Art is important. And a fashion show seems to be a fascinating way to conclude Mirai Tech City in October. If any one of our audience members is there and takes pictures of the fashion show, I think a lot of us in the West would be interested to see what goes on there, what kinds of experimentation there are, especially since, as we have discussed, there's more day-to-day technological integration in Japanese society. So how will that be reflected in clothing? How will that be reflected in accessories? Definitely would be fascinating for us Westerners to find out about. So now to our guests, Victoria and Nelson, any concluding thoughts you would like to leave our audience with? Anything that you want to say that hasn't been said yet, or anything that you would like to build upon as we conclude?
I think that anyone interested in longevity and biotechnology should at least once in their lifetime go to Japan and take a look what's going on there. October is going to be an interesting time to do it. But Japan is there, and it's going to be there for a long time, and it seems that it's only going to keep improving. So I highly recommend you to take a look. And also, right before, you have an amazing event that Jose is doing and we need entrepreneurs to apply to. We're going to have great pitch events there, and then later in Japan. So I highly recommend you also to like start in Spain, and then go to Japan and get involved with the community if you're not yet. It's amazing people.
Yeah, from my side, I just hope that I will be able to welcome you into Japan. If you do make it in October, feel free to shoot me a message. I'll be happy to reply. You can find me under my name on LinkedIn. I will be a standout profile because my tagline is make that optional, and I'm wearing a yellow sweater in my LinkedIn profile pic. So feel free to send me an invite. Feel free to reach out. I'll be happy to welcome you as a sneak peek, other than gene therapies, cell therapies, other than a lot of amazing technology that Japan is enabling. In the fashion show, we're going to have maybe the world's first air conditioner clothes. So stay tuned for that. So yeah, great.
Yes, that sounds remarkable. The world's first air conditioner clothes. I think we need that in the summer heat that we're facing here, both in the US and in Europe. I think even in September, if I visit Europe and this heat wave is going to continue, some air conditioned clothes would be a welcome addition to my wardrobe. But technology is advancing, and I think it's important for us to recognize that technology is advancing in other parts of the world where we don't always get a daily stream of news. And people like Victoria and Nelson and Jose, who have strong connections to those parts of the world, are conduits of that kind of information. So thank you to all of you for joining us today, and thank you to our audience that has been quite engaged. Please visit the website of Mirai Tech City at www.miraitech.city. And if you happen to find yourselves in Japan in October, don't miss it. And I hope that we can all, as a result, live long and prosper.